Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to make braided rings like the two that you see here. The first one we make the braid pattern will go all the way around like this one, and the other one will have a sizing area down here at the bottom quarter. We'll actually just take this one, make a copy of it, and cut out the bottom quarter and replace that with the smooth area here. Okay, and before we get started, I just want to say that this is just the way that I've come up with to make braided rings, and it isn't the only way to make them and not necessarily the best way to make them. It's just the way that I make them. All right, having said that, let's go ahead and get started. To make a braid, first you need a braid pattern. I have one here in my library. I'm going to go ahead and bring it out into the scene so you can see what that looks like. We will be making this, so don't worry, I will show you how to make this. We'll look at it over in perspective viewport first. So this is what it looks like in perspective view. Now we'll switch back to the top viewport and we'll isolate one of the curves. You can see that it looks kind of like a wave, maybe a sine wave or a bell curve, but some kind of wave. And all of these are actually the same wave. It's just different, they're kind of moved over. So this wave is the same thing, just moved over, and this other wave is the same thing, just moved over as well. Okay, I'm going to Control Z back to this stage here. We'll switch over to the right viewport, and you can see that from the right viewport it looks like an infinity symbol. And we'll go back to the top viewport here and just point out that it also has an axis line, and that axis line is in the center of it. All right, so these are the three things that we need to keep in mind while we're creating our braid pattern, and that is the fact that it looks like a wave from the top viewport, an infinity symbol from the right viewport, and that it has an axis line. And we'll start off by creating that wave pattern. Okay, we're going to start off by creating a new file, and I'll use the small objects millimeters template. And we're going to start off by creating that wave pattern, and to do that we're going to need to lay in 4 points. We're going to do that in the top viewport, so let me go ahead and switch over to the top viewport here and expand it. And to lay in these points, I want to be able to click on the grid, so we need to turn on grid snap. And make sure you have project turned on as well. I just generally leave project turned on at all times unless it's interfering with a particular part of the modeling process. I'll turn it off just during that part, and then I'll turn it right back on. I generally leave project on. Grid snap is something that I generally leave off unless I need it, and this is one of those rare cases where I do need grid snap. We're going to lay these points in this area right here, so I'm going to zoom that in so it'll be easier for you to see. Under the transform tab right here, we'll go ahead and grab the point tool. We'll put our first point right here, so along the green axis and 10 units above the x-axis here. And I'm going to hit enter. That will repeat the last command, which in this case is the point tool. Okay, so we're able to lay in another point. That next point is going to go 15 units over from that first one. I'll hit enter again. We'll drop down 20 units from there, and then I'll hit enter again, and we'll lay in our final point right here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and we'll select all of the points, and then come to this icon right here, which is, if we left click on it, gives us the control point curve, but if we right click on it, it gives us curve through points. So we're going to right click on it. You can see that immediately it puts that curve through those points for us. If your curve doesn't look like that, just come up here to the command line and make sure that your curve type is set to control point and that closed is set to no. Once your curve looks like this, go ahead and hit enter, and then you can hit delete to delete those points. We don't need those anymore. Select the curve. Again, under transform, let's get the mirror tool here, and we'll mirror from the top of the curve and then just pull straight down, and grid snaps will help you stay on that grid. All right, so we're done with the wave pattern. It is in 2 sections, but we're going to leave it like that, and we'll move on to creating the infinity symbol. Okay, so let's switch over to the right viewport and zoom in. And this is where project is going to help us, and grid snap. Okay, we're going to go to curve tools and grab the circle tool. up in the command line, let's click on 2 point, and we'll set our first point right here at the edge of our wave, the left edge here, which right now the wave in this viewport looks like a straight line, but this is our wave. And so we're going to snap the beginning of our circle here on the left side. Just click. Okay, and then we're going to come over 8 units, but you don't have to count them out. Just snap here. Okay, it's not letting me click onto the grid for some reason, and I don't know why. I've never had a problem with that before. Let's try that again. 2 point, snap. Let me turn off my near snaps and see if that helps. It does. Okay, so you need to turn off near snaps for this one particular operation here. And we can go ahead and leave near snaps off for now. I generally have it on, but we can leave it off for now. Okay, so we're just going to snap and snap to the grid until we are 2 units away from the origin. So right there. And that will be 8 units over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, because we had project turned on, it has placed it here along the y-axis. Okay, if we had not had project turned on, it probably would have snapped it from here over to here, and it would have been very strange looking. But let's go back to the right viewport. Okay, so we're going to select the circle. We're going to grab the split tool, and up in the command line, we're going to click on point. So we're splitting by point. We're going to snap here and click at the top quad, the left quad, and the bottom quad, and hit enter. And then we will select this part of the circle and hit delete. And that leaves us with these 2 sections. Go ahead and select them, go up to transform, click on mirror, and then we can just click here in the center for the start of our mirror plane, and then just pull straight up along that y-axis and click. All right, that'll mirror it over to the other side. And now go to curve tools, click on adjustable curve blend, and we're going to blend from here to here. Make sure that under continuity it's set to tangency for both point 1 and point 2, and click OK. And you can either hit enter to repeat the last command or click on it again. I'm going to hit enter, and we'll blend from here to here and click OK. Now select these parts of the infinity symbol, only these 3 sections, and click join to join them together, and then select the other sections and join them together. So now we have an infinity symbol, but it is split into 2 parts. All right, I'm just going to switch over to perspective view so you can see what we have so far. We've got this bell curve or sine wave or just wave, and it is in 2 parts, and we have an infinity symbol, and it is in 2 parts. All right, now we're ready to actually create our first braid strand from these curves that we've made here. So we're going to select this part of the wave and this part of the infinity symbol. Under curve tools, we're going to click on curve from 2 views. All right, that's going to make this new curve here, which is kind of a combination of these 2 curves. Just to help you understand what's going on there, we'll go ahead and extrude this out. You don't have to do this part, okay, but I'm just going to extrude that out into a surface and extrude this out into a surface as well. Okay, we'll go into shaded mode for a moment. And if we select this surface and this surface, and we take the intersection of those, which we could do under curve tools, I think, right here. We could take the intersection right here. I'm not going to do that, but you can just see that our curve from 2 views flows along the intersection of those 2 surfaces. Okay, so that's kind of what curve from 2 views is doing. It's extruding them both in their kind of their normal direction there, and then taking the intersection of that. Okay, I'm going to delete all that. Again, that's nothing you need to worry about. So let's delete these 2 curves. We don't need them anymore. And let's select the other 2 curves, and then run the curve from 2 views again on those, and then press delete to delete those curves. And then let's join these 2 sections together. Okay, so this is a single braid strand, and it is repeatable. So if we copied it over, right, from there to there, it repeats, and we can copy from there to there and so forth, and it just keeps repeating. Okay, you don't have to do that. We only need this one this one braid strand. Let's go into the top viewport here and lay in our axis line. So I'm going to grab the line tool. Because we have grid snaps turned on, we can just snap to the grid here, making sure you're in line with the end and on the x-axis. Okay, and then just come straight across, making sure that you finish the line in line with the other end of the wave. Okay, so now we have one braid strand and the axis line. What we need to do now is make it so it has 3 braid strands. Okay, let's switch over to the top viewport, and zoomed out a little bit here. We're going to grab the axis line and we're going to copy it. So with it selected, Control C, Control V, and we'll pull that copy just up here a little bit, and no, not a precise amount, but just somewhere up here. And let's divide that line into thirds. So we'll go up to Curve, Point Object, Divide Curve by Number of Segments, and we'll type 3 into the command line, and that will divide this line into thirds when I hit enter. Okay, so it hasn't actually split the line, but it has placed points where it would split it if it were, to put it in, cut it into 3 sections. We're going to use these as guides for creating the 3 braid strands. But before we can do that, we need to extend this wave, or really it is a braid strand now. We need to extend it one time this way, so let's grab that, go to Transform, grab the Copy tool, and copy from here to here. Hit Enter, and join the 2 braid strands together. With them selected, well actually it's a single braid strand that repeats once or twice. With that selected, grab the Copy tool again and copy it from here to here to here. Hit Enter, and so now we have our 3 braid strands, 1, 2, and 3. But the problem we have is that they overhang or go past the ends of our axis line, so we need to trim them off. To do that, we'll go to Curve Tools and grab the Line tool, and we'll set a line here. We'll snap to the first end of this line up here, and hold down Shift, pull straight down, and click, making sure that you go a fairly good ways past the bottom of the braid pattern here. Hit Enter to repeat the Line tool, and snap the other line starting from this end of this line up here. So click, press Shift, while you're holding Shift, pull straight down and click. Holding Shift helps you make the straight line. I'm going to do that over again. You don't have to, but click here. If you hold Shift, that locks you into 45-degree angles, and that's why that helps you make a perfectly straight line. Okay, so come here and click. Well, it's always perfectly straight. A line is always perfectly straight in Rhino, but it helps you make it perfectly vertical, is what I mean to say. Okay, let's select both of these lines and then run the trim command, and then let's select these parts that overhang. The way we're going to select those is by box selecting from right to left. So I'm going to click here and box select. I'm going to drag out from right to left, and I'll do that over here as well. And then hit Enter, and then delete these 2 lines, and then you can delete all of this, and our pattern is done. So we'll look at it here in the perspective view. All right, but right now it is way too big. It is 60 units long and 20 units tall, and that is just way too big. It is the size I always make my braid pattern because it's just easy to make it at that size. And I even have it saved in my library at that size. So when I bring my braid pattern in from my library, it comes in at that size. Okay, but and you can save this. It's probably a good place for you to save your work, so in case something happens, you don't lose all of that work. If you know how to save this to a library folder, if you've got a library folder set up in Rhino, go ahead and save it to the library folder, and then in the future you can just drag it in. Or if you don't have one set up, you can always use a file import to bring it into future projects as well. Okay, and I do have a video on how to create a library folder, and so I will put a link to that in the description. But what we need to do next is scale this down, and so that it's closer to a size that would be useful for us. Okay, we'll switch to top view. We'll switch to the top viewport and select everything. Remember, we still have grid snap turned on right now. I'm going to hold down shift and scale this down until it is 20 units long. Okay, grid snaps will help you get that exact, although you don't have to be exact in this case, but it's just a handy way to get us most of the way down to a proper size. We are done with grid snaps, so at this point let's go ahead and turn that off. Okay, we're not done with project. Like I said, I usually leave project on unless it is specifically hindering my the modeling process. And then as soon as I'm done with whatever I needed to turn project off for, I turn it right back on. That's just the way I work. You may do things differently. Okay, what I want to do now is select the braid strands, but not the axis line. So to do that, I'm box selecting from right to left. Okay, and when you box select from right to left, whatever touches the box gets selected. Okay, if you box select from left to right, the box has to fully enclose whatever you're trying to select. So it will select nothing in that case. In order to select the braid strands that way, I would need to box select the whole thing like that, and that would include the axis line, which I don't want at this time. So I can just select the braid strands by box selecting from right to left and then just touching the braid strands with the box. You could do that up here as well. Okay, and then it can work the other way as well. So I can box select from left to right just around the axis line, and I would only get the axis line. So or you could box select like this and get just the axis line, or just one of these lines. See, okay, but right now we want just these lines here, so we'll select them. Then we want to pipe them, so let's go to Solid Tools, click on the pipe command here, and we're going to give the pipes a diameter of 1.5 millimeters. So by default it'll be set to radius. We want to change that to diameter up in the command line, and we'll set the diameter by typing into the command line 1.5. And I do want to say here that the diameter of the pipes is a design choice, and you would arrive at that by experimenting, trial and error, trying out several different pipe diameters until you find one that you feel like works good for your particular project. In this project, I've already done the experimenting, and I have decided that 1.5 millimeters is the size that I want these pipes. Okay, so you don't have to do any experimenting for this particular tutorial, but just know that in the future, in real world situations, if you are asked to make a braided ring or braided bracelet or something like that, the pipe diameter would be something that you would experiment with. Okay, now what I want to do is switch over to shaded mode, or actually let's do ghosted, and I also want to add that axis line to my selection. So I'm going to hold down shift and grab that, and we're just going to scale this down some more. So we're using the pipes right now just as a guide to help us get this scaled down to the correct size for us. Okay, now these gaps, you see these triangular gaps here between the braids, this is another thing that you could experiment with. You may wish to have a braid with these gaps in it for your particular project in the future, or you may wish to close those gaps up. So that's a design choice that you would have to make in your future projects. For this particular project, we're going to close those gaps up. So I'm just going to keep scaling down until those gaps close. Okay, so I'm zooming in so I can see those gaps. They're very small now, but they're still there. And then you can see right here, that's where they were. I might just scale down a little bit more just to see maybe some overlap there. And we'll switch over to shaded mode. And then let's go to perspective view and see how that looks in perspective view. Okay, let's go to the front viewport now, and let's work on adjusting the amount of overlap between the pipes. Okay, so let me select the braid curves here, and let me point out to these kind of football shaped areas. So I say football, I'm referring to American football. Okay, so a lot of my people are not in the United States. A lot of my audience are not in the United States. So they may think I'm referring to a soccer ball, but I am talking about the American football. So this is the shape we're looking at here, that is where the pipes overlap. And we want to reduce that, minimize that. And let me go back into perspective view. So if we minimize the overlap, we will maximize the depth in these areas, which is really the detail of the braid. And we want to maximize that now. And if you scale this up vertically, you can see that you're reducing the overlap between the pipes and you're increasing the depth in these areas. Okay. Now they have to overlap some for 3D printing purposes, so you can't reduce it too much, but we can reduce it, maybe a little more, and that just keeps increasing this thickness. The reason we want to do this is later we're going to select the pipes and scale the pipes vertically. We'll lose some of that depth when we do that. Okay, so we want to maximize the depth at this point. All right, I'm going to Control Z back to where I have the curves selected. So you can do this in perspective mode, and you can just visually see, like, you can just visually say, I like the amount of overlap here. I feel like that is a good amount of overlap. Or you can be very precise about it. Go into the front view in wireframe mode, click on your axis line and go up to Curve Tools and click on Offset Curve, and you're going to offset by half of whatever amount of overlap you would like. So if we want 0.2 millimeters of overlap, then we offset by 0.1. Okay. Once you type that distance in, you just click to the top, hit enter to repeat the offset command, and then pull down and click to offset on the other side. You might want to put those offset lines on a different layer, like the red layer, so you can see them more easily. Then select your braid curves again and just scale them up or down as needed to get them to get these overlap areas to fit within those lines. If you go too far, then you would have to scale back down. Okay, so once it looks like they're fitting in there good, you've hit your target overlap. Okay, so you can do it visually, or you can be very precise about it. But either way, you just want to minimize the overlap between the pipes and maximize the depth here in these areas. All right, so it looks like we've got our vertical overlap between the pipes. We've got that taken care of. And let me go ahead and delete the pipes for now. And what we want to work on now is setting the vertical positioning of our curves. Okay, so the first thing that I'd like to do is make a copy of the axis line. So let's select that, press Control C and then Control V, and let's pull the copy up quite a bit, about there. And then the next thing I want to do is offset the axis line. So select it, come up to Curve Tools and grab the Offset Curve tool. And then we need to type in the thickness that we would like our ring to be. So we want it to be 2.2 millimeters thick. So I'm going to type 2.2 up in the command line and hit enter. And then you just need to pull up above the line and click. All right, so let me pull this line up a little bit more. So this kind of represents the thickness of our ring. And let me just say that the ring thickness is something that you may need to experiment with. So you may need to go as far as actually creating 2 or 3 or 4 different rings with 4 different thicknesses. 2, 3, 4 rings with different thicknesses to see which one gives you the results that you like best. Now I'm talking about making the rings in Rhino and seeing how they look. I don't mean going all the way into casting the ring and whatnot. But just go ahead and create it all the way to the end and see if you like the thickness that you chose. If you didn't, then you need to choose a different thickness and try again. You'll know that, oh, let me try it a little thicker, let me try it a little thinner. And so it is a thing of experimentation. Of course, in this tutorial, you don't have to worry about that. We're just going to go with 2.2 millimeters thick. All right, after you've offset that, the next thing you want to do is select the braid curves and move them up by half the thickness. So you can either click on the arrow and type 1.1, which is half the thickness, and hit enter, or I'll Control Z back. You can click on that arrow and type in the thickness of the ring, 2.2 divided by 2. You can type that little math equation right in the text box. Not a big deal in this case because obviously 2.2 divided by 2 is 1.1. But sometimes you may have a thickness that isn't easily divisible by 2 in your head, and you can just type the math equation in there. All right, but either way, you just want to move this up by half of the thickness. Okay, so we are almost done with the curves, and what we're going to move into now is actually creating a segment that is made out of pipes. So far we've been making a segment that is made out of curves, and now we're going to move into making a segment that is made out of pipes. Okay, so what we want to do is select our braid curves and come up to transform and click on copy, grab the copy tool, and we'll copy this once in this direction, hit enter, grab the copy tool again, this is still selected, and we'll just copy it over this way. Okay. Now select all 3 segments there and join them together, and then we'll pipe them. So go to Solid Tools and Pipe. It should still remember the diameter, 1.5 millimeters, and you should just be able to hit enter. Okay, but if for some reason it doesn't, look up there and just make sure it says 1.5. If it doesn't, type 1.5 and hit enter. Okay. We are actually done with the curves now, and you could either delete them, or you could go to visibility and hide them, or you could put them on a different layer, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put them on the red layer here. Just while they're selected, I'm going to right click on the red layer and click change object layer, and then I'll hide the red layer. Okay. So now what we want to do is let's just look at these and see what they look like from the perspective view. Okay, so this is what our braid is looking like so far. Go back to the front view. We want to vertically scale this so that it fits within our guidelines here, right? So select everything, kind of zoom into the middle here, and just scale it vertically until it is sitting on this line. We'll go into shaded mode. Need to pull it down a little bit. You definitely want it on the line, or maybe even slightly below it. Okay. What you don't want is for it to be above the line, because this line here actually represents the customer's finger, and if you make this float above the line, what you're really doing is making a larger ring, a ring with a larger size. Okay, and so it may not fit well. So we're just going to pull this down until it sits on it, and I'll just go slightly below. Okay. Now, one problem you may run into, these notches here may cause the ring to act as though it is a larger ring size. So you may want to design this ring, say maybe in 3 different sizes. Maybe we're making this one a 7 1/4, so you could come down a quarter size, maybe do a 7, maybe do a 6 3/4, and yes. So keep go down. And then make those rings in resin, clean them really good to make sure there's no resin residue on them, and then let the customer try on the resin rings to see if they fit right. And so even though their finger size, say, is 7 1/4, because of these notches, it may act like a larger ring. You may need to make it a smaller finger size. If you find that one of the rings you made feels too big and the next one down feels too small, then you may need to go like an 1/8 size, go between those 2 sizes, and then let that be your final design. So there can be some trial and error on the finger size as well because of these notches here. It makes it kind of imperfect. The reason for that, the reason why the notches might cause it to feel like a larger sized ring, is because the customer's finger is not a metal pipe. It's a little bit mushy, and it will mush into these notches. Okay, so effectively it's as though the ring is a larger size for the customer's finger. All right, so if their finger was a metal pipe, then that would not be a problem. But since their finger is soft, it'll flow into those little notches. So that's why you're going to size the customer, of course. You're going to let them try on a sizing ring, and you may end up having to make this braided ring slightly smaller. Or later on, we're going to put a sizing area on one of the rings, and you can actually size it down until it feels comfortable to the customer, if that ends up being a problem. So the sizing area is very nice for things like that. All right, so let's go ahead, and now we need to trim our pattern here because it goes past the length of our segment. So to fix that, and let's switch over to wireframe mode as well for this part. Let's go to curve tools. We'll grab the line tool. We'll snap a line right here. Hold down shift, pull straight down and click. And then I want to hit enter to repeat that. Repeat the line tool. We'll click here to snap our new line. Hold down shift, pull straight down and click. Select both lines. Grab the trim tool and then select the parts of the braid that go past our segment. Once you've done that, hit enter to exit the trim command, then press delete to delete the trim lines. All right, and we'll keep this line right here, but we can delete this top line. We don't need that anymore. It was just a kind of an extra guide. We do need the bottom line though. Okay, so we need this one and we need this one. Okay, let's just kind of look at our braid segment now. So this is what we've got so far, and now what we need to do is move on to calculating how many of these segments we're going to need to go all the way around our ring. To calculate the number of segments, first we need to lay in our sizing circle. So I'm going to do that in the front viewport. Go to the front viewport here, zoom out a little bit, click on the circle tool here, and the center of the circle is going to be in the center of the world. So we're going to type 0 and hit enter in the command line, and we want to enter the diameter. Now it may be set to radius, so make sure it doesn't say radius here. If it does, just click on diameter. And the diameter that we want to give it is 17.53, okay? And that is a US size 7 1/4. So just hit enter after you type in the diameter. And then immediately we want to move the curve seam down to the bottom. So go to curve tools, click on the curve seam tool here, and then just click here and drag this down to the bottom quad and click, and then hit enter. Okay. So now that we have this, we can calculate the number of segments. And the way we do that is we're going to find the length of the circle and find the length of a segment, and we're going to divide the length of the circle, or also you might, the technical term is the circumference of the circle. So we'll divide that by the length of the segment, and that will give us the number of segments that we need. So I'm going to click here and come up to analyze. So I've got the circle selected. I'm going to go up to analyze and click on length, and you can see it's saying that it's 55.072 millimeters. You can round that off to the nearest tenth, so 55.1, and we'll just click on this line and hit enter, and that will repeat the length command. And hitting enter repeats the previous command if you are not running a command currently. Okay, and the previous command was length. And so it's running the length command again. You can see in the command window it says command length, and that's from me hitting enter. And since I had this line selected, it's giving us a length of 6.87, which we would round up to 6.9. So once you have those two lengths, you can pull up a calculator, and we'll type in, if you can't see them both, you may want to adjust your command window. You can just put your cursor here, and you can drag that up or down to adjust the size of it. Okay, and this may change. You can come over here and make sure that this is a window and this is the scroll bar. Just pull it all the way down. Okay, and if you still can't see them both after you've pulled it down, just run them both again if you've made your command window bigger, and you might be able to see them both that time. I like to keep this just big enough where I can see both of the both lengths if I run two length commands. So that's just something I've over time come to like, to have my command window be that tall. You can also in your note, you've got a note section here. You can type in the lengths over here if you want to. You could type like circle 55.1 and segment 6.9. Okay, and if you don't have a note tab here, you can get that from the panels menu. Click on, put a check mark next to notes. It may come out here as a free floating window, and you can just drag it over here onto your side panel, and oops. Okay, I need to drag it from the tab, I guess. There we go. And you can put it over here. Once you have it over here, you can click and drag it to reposition it among the tabs, okay? So if you want to do that, the notes thing is very handy whenever you're doing projects, to write down various pieces of information, like the, you know, we could say ring size US 7.25, for instance. Okay, so you can put information about your project in your notes, and that'll be saved to the file. Okay, so that's another thing you can do, or you can write it down on a piece of paper, or do it like I do, where you have your command window big enough to see both measurements. Okay. Okay, so what we need to do now, though, is pull up a calculator and type in that. So 55.1 divided by the length of the segment, 6.9, and we get 7.98 or 7.99. And you need to round this to the nearest whole number because we're working on a closed curve, which is a circle is a closed curve. You can only use a whole number of segments and make the pattern still line up, you know, at both ends. Okay, so we'll have to round this to a whole number, which would be 8. Okay, so we need 8 segments. All right, now from here there's 2 different methods that we could use, and I'll be going over both methods as far as getting the 8 segments over onto our sizing circle. Okay, now that we know how many segments that we need to somehow get that number of segments, 8 segments, from here over onto our ring. To do that, we're going to use flow along curve, but there are 3 slightly different ways that we could do that. And I was just going to show you one way, and then I said, well, no, I'll show them 2 ways, but you know what? I think I'm going to show you all 3 ways. So I want you to just sit back and watch me do all 3 ways, and then you pick the one that you like best. Okay. The first way is probably the easiest one to understand, but it is going to be the hardest one for your computer to do. All right. So that's the one we're going to start with. And the way that works is you just select the segment, including the little axis line. Go up to under transform. Here at the rectangular array, there's a little drop down. Click on that and get the linear array tool. The number of items will be 8. So type 8 into the command line and hit enter. Our reference points will be here and here. Okay, just select all of this and join it together. This will join all of the braid strands together, and it will join all of the little axis lines into one long line. Select your braids. Under transform, grab the flow along curve tool, and in the command line, make sure that copy is set to yes, rigid is set to no, and stretch is set to yes. Okay, and if you don't have stretch set to yes, the braid won't meet perfectly at the ends here. So the ends will be here, down here, okay? And then base curve, select near one end. We're going to select right here. I'm going to show you what happens at the target curve, select near matching end. If you click on the end that doesn't match, right here, it will put the ring inside the sizing circle. So that's how you'll know that you didn't click on the matching end, okay? So what we're going to do, this is the end of the circle right here. That's where we put the curve seam. And so this is one end of that curve, and this is the other end. We're going to click down here near the bottom center of the circle, a little bit to the left. Okay, and that's the matching end. But just know that if you click on the right, a little to the right of the bottom center of the circle, it'll put it inside the ring. And you'll just know that you need to Control Z and do it again, and this time click a little to the left of the bottom circle, bottom center. Okay, so here is our ring flowed around our curve, our sizing circle here. And there's one problem. If we click on a segment, one of the braid strands, and we look up here in the command window, it says one open poly surface added to selection. We don't want these to be open, we want them to be closed. And to fix that, you with it selected, you click on explode and then on join. and you can see that it was joined into a closed poly surface. Now I'm going to Control Z that back once and then twice, undoing the join and then undoing the explode, because what I normally do is just select all of the braids and explode them all at once and then join them all at once. Okay, so now this is the ring done, all right, using the first method. Now what we'll do is go ahead and show you the second method. Okay, let's go ahead and delete the, well actually let's Control Z back to this part here. Okay, so this is the second method. It's a little more complex, but it'll be easier on your computer. Okay, and the way this works is you select the line, all right, you array it out 8 times from here to here, select all of those lines and join them together. Now we're going to, typically what I do is I move this over one, but we're going to start off by flowing it like it is. So flow along curve, copy is yes, rigid is no, stretch is yes, flow from here to here. And you see it struggles quite a bit. My computer struggled with that. And right here at the beginning and end of the circle, you can see that the mesh is very dense. Okay, it would still work, it's just very dense. So I'm going to Control Z. What I like to do to fix that is, or to avoid that, is to move the segment over one segment length, okay, and then just flow it from there. It'd be a little faster. For some reason, I don't know why the computer struggles if you start right there. And you can see the mesh is a lot neater looking there, okay? Just select all of the braid strands in that segment and then use the polar array around the center of the world 8 times. Okay, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and box select from right to left. Okay, making sure that I get all 3 strands in each segment. And then join them all together. Okay, so that's still our ring, and that's just the second method, and that's probably my favorite because it's very easy on the computer. And now I'll show you the third method. So normally I would Control C back, but I had to restart the recording here at this part, and because of that I had to reopen the file at this stage. I had saved it at this stage, I had to reopen it, and because of that, Control Z is no longer an option. So what I will do instead is delete all of this and select this segment here. I go into the front viewport and I will move it from here to here, and we'll take this and explode it, remove that from the selection and delete the rest of them. Okay, so this is the same starting place. I just couldn't Control Z back to it because I had to restart the recording at that point. All right, so the way this method works is we will delete 2 of the strands. So I like to save this one right here that starts in the middle. So one strand starts at the top, this one starts in the middle, and then the other one starts at the bottom. I like to get the one that starts at the top and the one at the bottom and delete them, saving only this strand. And then we go ahead and linear array this one out 8 times from here to here. Select all of that and join it together. Okay, and then we're going to draw a straight line from here. Hold down Shift, pull straight down and click. So it's a perfectly vertical line. We're going to select that line. We're going to make a copy of it from here to here. Select both of the lines, go to Curve Tools and tween between 2 curves. Make sure that the number is set to 2 and hit Enter. And we're going to select those 4 lines and the strand. Click on Transform and Flow Along Curve, and we'll flow from here to here. Okay, this one takes the computer a minute. to wrap that strand all the way around. Select the strand, you'll see that it's an open poly surface, so explode it, join it back together. It should now be a closed poly surface, but we only have the one strand. To fix that, we're going to go to rotate, click on that. Copy will by default be set to no, so click on it to change it to yes. The center of rotation will be the center of the world, so press 0 and hit enter. And we're going to use reference points, so copy from here to here to here, then hit enter. And now we've got our 3 strands. Okay, so this one is a little bit in the, in between the other two. It's probably the most complex of the 3 as far as understanding it, but it's not as hard on your computer as the first method, and probably a little harder on your computer than the second method. The one advantage this method has is you're probably more likely to connect the 2 ends of the strand over here than you are the second method. But honestly, the only time I've ever had the second method fail to perfectly connect the pieces is when I forget to set stretch to yes. So I like the second method of the 3 methods. That's my favorite. But I did want you to see all 3 methods, just so you have all those things in your arsenal. There's different ways that you can do these things. I just want you to be aware of all 3 methods. Again, my favorite is the second method, but you can pick whichever the one you want, to get your braids over onto your sizing circle. Okay, so now we'll move on to creating the sizing area down here at the bottom. Okay, so what we want to do is take all of these things. We don't need really any of these anymore, but I'm just going to, I'm not going to delete them. I'm just going to put them over on the red layer, which is hidden. So that just leaves the sizing circle and the braided ring out here. And I want to make a copy of the braided ring. So we'll select all the braids, hit Control C, Control V. So now there's a copy. I'm going to move that copy back a little bit. I'm going to group them together by pressing Control G, and then I'm going to put those on a different layer as well. And I'll turn that layer off, and we'll bring that back when we're done creating the sizing area on this one. All right. So to start off creating the sizing area, what I'm going to do is make a solid band that kind of encapsulates the braided ring here. And we'll go into the front viewport, select the sizing circle, and we're going to offset that by the thickness of our ring, which was 2.2, but I want to go a little past remember we let the inside of our ring go a little below that axis line, which puts it a little bit into the sizing circle here, but it also puts it a little outside the thickness here, just by a hair. Okay, it goes a little past 2.2. This line is at 2.2, and our braid goes a little past that. Okay, so I want to go a little past that. So grab this, offset the curve, and let's try 2.25. Okay, and you can see that goes out past that by a little bit. Okay, so now select the sizing circle and this circle, and let's go ahead and isolate them. So visibility and then isolate. All right, and let's put a point at the bottom quad on both of those. Okay, so now there's a point here and a point here. And I feel like, because we're in ghosted, all right, so we'll go over to shaded. It's like the points were pretty small. I have my points in my shaded set up to look bigger, so you don't have to worry about that, but just so they show up better on the video. Okay, so we'll select both of the points and isolate them, and then we'll switch over to the right viewport. All right, and we'll grab the circle tool here under curve tools. We'll grab the circle tool. Up in the command line, let's activate 2 point, and we'll draw a circle from here to here. Okay, snapping to those 2 points. Select the circle and then click on split and select the 2 points, hit enter, and then you can delete all of that. Okay, so we split that circle in half basically. Now come up to visibility and let's bring back our ring. Click on the circle and let's move that circle out to the left just until it goes a little past the outside of one of these braids. Okay, So something like that. Back way out to about there. Go to Surface Tools and click on Revolve, okay? And then the start of the revolve axis is going to be the center of the world. So type 0 and hit enter. And then the end of the revolve axis is going to be along the x-axis. So hold down Shift, pull out to the left and click. And then the start angle should be 0. If it says 0, just hit enter. If it doesn't say 0, then type 0 and hit enter. Mine says 0, so I'm going to hit enter. The revolution angle should be 360. If it says 360, you can just hit enter. If it doesn't say 360, then you need to type 360 and hit enter, okay? So I'm just going to hit enter. Okay, and this is what we made, this surface right here. If we go into perspective view, you can see that, okay? I'm going to isolate that, so visibility and isolate, and then with it selected, I'll go to transform and mirror, and I'll mirror it this way. So 0 for the center of the world, hold down Shift and pull out along the x-axis here. So even though the red line is over here, I'm still in line with the x-axis. Holding Shift is going to lock me into 45-degree angles. So I'm just going to pull out this way and click. And that mirrors it over like that to the other side. If you have trouble with that, do it in, say, the top viewport and mirror it up there. That might be easier, okay? Okay, now that we have these two sides of our smooth band here, we're going to go to Surface Tools, and then we're going to click on Loft, and we're going to loft from here to here, and click enter, and then enter again, and then enter again, and then we're going to do that again. We're going to loft, but this time from here to here. Hit enter a couple times, 3 times. Okay, select everything and join all together. All right, so now we have this solid smooth band that pretty much perfectly encapsulates our braid. So now I'm going to type, click on visibility and click on show to bring back our braided ring. And we can, we've got our band made, and now we're ready to trim the band and the braided ring that's the next step in the process. Okay, from this point, let's go into the front viewport, zoom out a little bit, and let's switch over to wireframe mode, or maybe ghosted. I'm going to do wireframe though, and let's go to curve tools and grab the line tool. The start of our line will be the center of the world, so I'm just going to type 0 and hit enter. And I'm going to hold down Shift. That's going to pull me into a 45. I'm going to pull out at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and hold down Shift and pull out. And what I'm taking note of is here and here, we have a notch right here and right here on either side of the 45-degree angle. You can pick either notch you want. I'm going to go for the one right here. Okay, and so I don't have to hold down Shift now. I'm just going to kind of aim, try to make my line go through that little notch right there. Okay, and click. All right, and then just select the line and come to transform and mirror it across like that. All right. Now, what we want to do is select everything here. Well, not everything. We don't want to get the, we don't need this curve anymore. So select that curve and delete it. And then select the sizing circle and let's hide that. Okay. And now let's select everything and split it with these two lines here. Okay, hit enter. And now what we want to do is come over here and select this part of the smooth band we made and delete it. And then in here, we want to select the braided part of the ring and delete those, okay? So this is leaving us with, the bottom quarter here is smooth and the other 3 quarters are braided. We can delete these lines. We don't need those anymore. Let's now draw a straight line going from the center of the world. Hold down Shift, pull straight down and click. Select the smooth area and split it by that line and delete 1/2. We'll delete that half there and delete the line. We don't need that. Let's go into perspective view and we need to cap the braids. Okay, so right now they're open on the ends. Select all 3 braids, go to solid tools and then click on cap planar holes. Okay, and now let's click on this and then go to visibility and click on isolate so that this is all that's on the screen. So here on the end, not this part that is at the you know, we don't want to click on the part down here, but on this part up here, we want to go to Surface Tools and then go to Blend Surface. And we want to blend from here to here. Okay, now it's very important. If you click here and then here, it'll twist. Okay, you can see how that's twisted. So you have to click on, I'm going to hit cancel, you have to click on corresponding ends of the edges of the surfaces that you're trying to blend. Okay, so I'm going to click here and here, or you could click here and here. So blend surface, I'm going to click here and here. Okay, and now this is kind of too much. So first we need to set it to tangency on both points, so because it was set to curvature. I'm going to go into the front viewport, and you can leave it like this if you want, but I'm just going to hit this little lock, and I'm going to drag these handles back a little bit just to make that more like a half circle from the front viewport. So I'm just coming back a little bit. Okay, click OK, and then go back into perspective view. Let's run blend surface again, and this time we're going to click here and then here. Again, remember to click on corresponding ends of the edges. So if we did that wrong, we would get this. If I click here and then here, it crosses. Okay, so it's trying to blend, you know, this edge over to this edge and vice versa. So blend edges, click here and here, click OK, and then hit enter to repeat that, and click here and here. Okay, and so blend from there to there. I'm going to select everything, well, like that, and join it all together. Okay, then go into the front viewport and go to transform and mirror. Go to mirror from the center of the world, hold down shift, pull straight down and click, and then join all of that together. Okay, so this is the smooth section here, and we'll go to visibility and show, and that'll bring back our sizing circle and the braided part of the ring. So I'm going to select the smooth part and then all three braid strands. Press Ctrl G to group that all together. I'm going to click on the, turn on the purple layer here and click on that, and then I'm going to click on isolate. So basically that got rid of the sizing circle. This purple one, I'm going to select it and right click on default and change it to the default, back to the default layer. Okay, so these are our two braided rings, one where the braided pattern goes all the way around, and one where it has a smooth sizing area at the bottom quarter. And now we're ready to start working on the materials. Okay, to set up the materials, let's first switch over to rendered mode. And I like to start off by changing the background, so we'll come over here and click on the rendering tab, and come down to the backdrop section here and click on the color box here. Now I've already got my light blue color, I believe this is it here, and if you set this drop down to HSV sliders, the values are 211 for the hue, 18 for saturation, and 100 for value if you want to copy that light blue background color. Okay, now let's switch over to the materials tab, which is right there, and I think I have somehow got these out of order a little bit. I'll move them around. I think they are normally like that. Okay, so this is the materials tab. We'll click on this little plus sign here, come down to metal. By default, you get this kind of bright silvery material, and it is a little too bright. I'm going to go ahead though and drag it over onto my ring here with the sizing area. Because we grouped it, they all took that material, all the different braid strands and this section down here. If we had not grouped it, we would have had to drag it onto each braid strand and then drag it also onto the sizing area. Okay, like I said, this is kind of too bright. Not that silver doesn't look like this, but I just like it to be a little darker. If we click on this color box here and we change the drop down to custom color list, because we're making a metal material, it will give us metal colors. And let's click on silver, and you'll see that it's a little bit darker. Okay. Now also, whenever I've got something that's got a lot of detail like this, where these braids kind of intersect with each other is kind of a high detail area, I feel like the details of the braid get lost in all of the reflections. Like over here, the details of the braid stand out very clearly, but over here it kind of gets lost. And I'm talking about this is kind of a dark area right here, and here it's not dark. All right, so I like to try to fix that by just bringing the polish level down a little bit. So I like my polish level like maybe around 65 to 70 for things like this. Okay, but that is up to you. It doesn't help completely. Unfortunately, that's about as good as I can make it without making it look, completely flat like that. Okay, which is another option. If you want to do that, you can bring it down to, so that's like 50, and that doesn't look too bad. But now if you're presenting this to a client and you present it to them like this, they may ask, "What, are you not going to polish it?" And you'll need to explain, "Well, I just did that so you can see the details of the braid better." And you may want to show it to them fully polished and also like this. But that'll be up to you how you handle that situation. All right, that actually looks pretty good. But I'm going to go ahead and put it back to say 65. Okay, and now I'm going to duplicate that. So just right click on the metal here, or maybe right click and click on duplicate. And so this way we get to keep our polish level. It'll be the same. I'll go ahead and drag this over onto the other ring, but I will change the color. So we'll click on the color box here. I'm going to switch to gold. There's two golds. I like this one that says gold and then has the word yellow next to it. Okay, but I feel like that might be too bright. It's okay like that, but I'm going to click on it, switch to HSV sliders. I'm just going to bump up the saturation a little bit, so somewhere between say 35 and 40. Okay, something like that. And again, all of that is a design choice. You can experiment with different polish levels and different colors, and you can rename these, by the way, either up in here by clicking on them or down here. You click. So if you wanted to call this gold, for instance, okay, and we could call this one silver. But that's certainly up to you. Okay, you might call this white gold or platinum or something. But all right, there you go. Those are our two rings, two braided rings, one with a sizing area and the other one where the braided pattern goes all the way around. And I want to thank all of you for watching this tutorial, and I hope to see all of you in future videos.